this impacts, the personality of a person impacts on how the session will go. Then audience disengagement. Sometimes the panel, the conversation is going in one direction, but they're not necessarily engaging because you've lost the panel, you've lost the audience. The discussion is too technical. The discussion has gone off topic. Discussion is monotonous. If you remember what I said about creating a flow, that's one way to address that. And then sometimes you have panelists talking over each other, overlapping each other, causing confusion. You just say politely, please, can you let this person finish? They will come to you. As the panelist, you, as the moderator, you have the power. So don't feel weak or don't feel like, oh, someone is going to give me, is going to be cross with me for telling him to pause. As long as you're doing it moderate, polite, you actually have the power to do so. And then finally, sometimes you have panel sessions. So calming people down. Sometimes you need to change the conversation. Sometimes you need to move to another topic, during the panel session because it was getting too heated up. And I said, well, I didn't want people to start exchanging blows on the stage. And it wasn't really like changing topic. I just allowed us to kind of and they were able to continue. So there are ways you can be innovative about creating your panel discussions. One is very important, interesting ways of setting context. I've done that in many ways in different areas. Sometimes you do it by, starting with a short video, or you have somebody set the scene or a briefing paper or a presentation. It has to be something interesting and engaging. One mistake that people make with context setting is if you do it, you start your panel session and it goes into using audiovisual. So nothing stops you from putting some stats, putting a graph, gives people on the screen, gives people an idea of what to expect. Then after your panel conversation, if you produce a brief or an advocacy note, 1 page, 2 page, it helps to continue the engagement and ensures that that whole conversation is not wasted. So that is one way to bring innovation into doing your panels. Think about the products that will come after you finish your panel session. Gender and intersectionality. In February, we had this panel on Nigeria's macroeconomic outlook. And it was an all-male panel until they remember that, oh my God, there's no woman here to talk about this. And then I was called to join the panel. But I mean, this was a panel of top economics, World Bank, different, like big, top economics. And it was interesting because when I was asked all the questions about, the same questions about our exchange rate, Forex and all that, I brought in a dimension that nobody else in that panel could have brought in. And that was the dimension around inclusion of vulnerable groups, how whatever exchange rate instabilities are affecting small businesses. And a colleague of mine screenshot the comment section where they said, oh, finally a woman is talking, finally a woman is talking. So it's important to ensure that you have gender balance in your panel, put persons with disability in your panel, bring the farmers into the room, bring the growers, make sure that you are very conscious of gender and intersectionality. And finally, let your panel conversation be one that amplifies voice. So for every single topic that you're reflecting on, who can represent the voice of the voiceless person who is affected, So these are just some little points. I would stop here so that people can ask questions, because that way, anything else I haven't covered, I can speak to. So I think I'm going to show you pictures at the end. So this picture where you see International Conference of Women in Governance, I was moderating a panel of about, I got there and I was told that I have 10 panelists. I was like, how am I going to do 10 panelists in 60 minutes? And the organizer said to me, unfortunately, some people said they were not coming and then they showed up. So we ended up having 10 panelists. I put the picture on the lower left because even though it was in a village setting, I had the unique opportunity of having a very nice little community panel, village panel with these very powerful women who told me stories about maternal and child deaths that we, the elites in our nice offices, may never tell. This was somewhere in Niger State. So, and this is really an example of amplifying voice, because taking the voices of the women and bringing it back into the decision-making spaces. Okay, I'm going to stop here in the interest of time and then take any questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, Dr. Osasuyi. That has been an amazing training session. I definitely have gotten over a lot of pointers on how to better improve myself in moderating sessions and panels, and I'm very sure our fellows have gained knowledge from it. So we're open to taking questions. If you have any questions, just raise your hands up and you can ask your questions, or you can also drop it in the chat box for Doctor to answer before we end today's sessions. We have about 10 minutes to do that. Hello, ladies. Do we have questions? So in school, then we're done with classes and then we don't have questions. The teacher assumes we've understood what it is. So probably we give Doctor the permission to now ask questions so we can answer based off of our presentation. Okay, great. I can see a team box asking, what are your thoughts on sending questions to panelists before the sessions?
Thank you. That's absolutely important. The success of your panel is really dependent on how well you prepare, and then you prepare your panelists. So it's not an exam. It's not like secondary school exam. You either pass or fail, you know. So sending them questions gives them that opportunity to prepare, and then gives them the opportunity to ask you for clarification. I had a challenge in March. I participated in a panel. They sent me questions. One of the questions was very sensitive. It wasn't, and it was going to be a panel that was going to also be live on radio. And so I had the opportunity to call the moderator to say, this question, I would like to answer it live because it's very sensitive. I mean, why would you talk about something that would look like maybe you're, criticizing, so I declined to answer that question. So that's one of the things that sending you questions, it helps the panelists to prepare better, but it also helps to address any issue that would cause potential discomfort when you start your panel on stage. So please send them questions and send them the briefing notes, objectives and everything, so they know what they are coming to.
Okay, our next question is from Wezi. Lillian, I will call you. So just raise your hand if you want to ask the question. Then I will call you to ask your question. But then we have some in the chat box. Our next question is from Wezi. She said, thank you for the amazing presentation. When creating open-ended questions, would it be good to use the 5 Ws to assist? That's the who, what, where, and why. Over to you, Doctor.
So I think it depends on your topic. I don't want to put, it's a good way to start, but it's not like an exam. It's not like an inquiry, so to speak. So where you say who, what, where, who is affected, what are the problems. So that may be applicable, but if you're looking at a straight policy topic what you need to do is take a deep dive right into, you may even be using a framework. So for example, if you're looking at advocacy, you're using, so one thing that is helpful too for panel sessions is if you're doing a technical session and a framework will help you. So maybe socio-ecological model, for example, individual, community, family, institutional, why not? Or you want to use the advocacy framework if you're looking at if it's a panel that is linked to advocacy. So no hard and fast rule. If that works for you, fine, but it depends on the topic.
Thank you so much. So Lillian, you can go ahead and ask your question, please.
Okay, thank you much, Dr. for this session. I want to ask two questions. When you are a panelist and you are given 2 minutes to introduce yourself, let's say you are in a panel discussion of farm to fork, maybe, or climate change, how do you actually approach your introduction? And what are some of the things to include in your introduction? And number two, when you're concluding and you are given 2 minutes to say your final word concerning the same panel discussion, how do you approach it?
Okay, thank you. So quickly, if you are told to introduce yourself in 2 minutes, what helps is everyone should have a full-page bio, half-page bio, 2-sentence bio, 150 words. So typically, if you have, 150-word bio, it just quickly tells us. And then, many people, when they're asked to introduce themselves, they start talking about things they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. So the recency helps to let people know where you are, what you're doing, and they can connect better with it. So I'm this person, I'm currently leading A, B, C, D, E. I work in this context. And then if you still have 1 minute, you now talk about, what you have done in the past and how your experiences have shaped whatever. And you can even give us a bonus by now telling us that, and this is the wealth of experience you're bringing to the panel. Then usually 2 minutes final words. As a panelist, once as you're speaking and reflecting on what you're saying, already be thinking about what you want to be remembered for. And so what you want to be remembered for is how you close out. So you already have your frame that, look, women need to be included in governance, and to achieve that A, B, C, D, E. Or my final words are, let's collaborate, let's participate, and ensure that A, B, C, D, E gets done. So prepare your final words from the beginning. When you begin to shape your thoughts on the panel, what do I want to be remembered for at the end of this panel session? I usually like to make it punchy, catchy. I want it to be something that when people see me, they say, oh, those words were really focused and powerful. So always close on a powerful note. Don't start to tell stories when you're told to say your final words. I see a question here about etiquettes of a panelist. For women, the first thing I say is your dressing. So sometimes you see a woman struggling to sit because her dress is a bit too short, and then she needs to, you're looking for a scarf, or just because of the way you've crossed your legs, So first of all, it's about your dressing. Just dress to be comfortable so that once you sink into the chair, you are happy and fine. The other thing too is think very reflectively about how you're going to engage. You've gotten the questions ahead of time, prepare. So you see some people come on stage, it's very tricky, and then they start reading. While it's okay to have a summary points on your paper or whatever, it's going to be a bit too distracting if you're reading and not making eye contact with the audience. So try to learn your points, practice decorum, practice understanding how to speak to other people. Then be very respectful. If you have a traditional ruler on your panel, or you have a minister or a governor or a president, there are different ways to approach. Last year, when I had an opportunity to do a dialogue with 3 presidential candidates, including our current president, I actually spent almost a week just practicing. So I'd like to invite His Excellency, the something, something, something. So I had to learn how to ask people questions. How do you address a past president? How do you address a current president? How do you address this person? How do you greet this person? So those things are learned. We don't all know them. So take time to consciously prepare and ensure that you do not get caught unawares. In March, it happened to me that I was doing a ministerial panel that I talked about. I acknowledged the minister, And then I handed over to the other panelists to introduce themselves because I thought I'd acknowledge the minister. And then someone immediately said, Madam, you are very wrong. That is not our protocol in Nigerian government, you know. And I had asked someone and he told me that that's what to do. So please ask questions and ensure that you really understand the dynamics, the power play, and you are able to manage that properly.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I can see our fellows, they just keep on dropping more questions. And we have Yasmin here from Egypt. She's asking, while introducing panelists, would it be better to say a quick brief about them or let them introduce themselves and give a background about themselves? And I think I'll read okay, just answer, then I'll read up the next question then.
Okay, so in a second, I always prefer to, because of time management, I always prefer to introduce them and I put the picture, the slide with their bio on the screen. But to make sure that it represents what they want, you can ask them for their profile. If it's a very disciplined panel, they can speak 1-2 minutes. I have had people use 5 minutes to introduce themselves before. So by default, I prefer to introduce them respectfully.
Okay, our second to the last question is panel or plenary session. What helps the host / organizer to decide what opinion would be most successful to get the most out of an event / workshop? I don't know if this question is quite explanatory. So Jacinta, I think you might have to mute and ask your question.
I think you asked it well, just that you said option instead of opinion instead of option. But my question was, when organizing a workshop or an event, what helps to decide whether you want to do a panel session or a plenary session, so you can get the most out of that session and get the most interaction with the audience, as well as bring out the key experts key points.
Okay, thank you.
I hope it makes sense.
I will try to some extent, yes. So I just want to say that a plenary is really that session where you're bringing everybody together. So a plenary is, in a conference, for example, you would have some sessions are plenary. So everybody attending the conference comes into a big hall. And then some are breakouts. So you have smaller groups of conversations going on. Okay. So plenary would usually be for big ticket agendas, you know, and then the breakout session. So a plenary could be in form of a panel, or it could be, there are many formats you can do a plenary. So for example, in big conferences, you have plenary at the beginning, at the end, or maybe right in the middle, or when the president is coming. And as part of those plenary sessions, you would also have, you can have panels, or you can have presentations. Now, what determines whether I do a plenary? Okay, so like I said, the plenary could have panel or it could have presentations. Is the topic where you're trying to do. So for example, if you want a commitment, so you are going to get some leaders in the room, you want them to make a commitment. One way to do that is have a quick panel in the plenary, and then you bring the big policymakers or decision makers or academics, evidence, partners. They speak, they arrive at a climax, and then after that, the president or whoever can come up and make his speech and make a commitment. So what determines whether you go for like a plenary, like you said, or a small panel breakout, on the other hand, is whether how big the agenda is, who needs to be in the room. So for example, depending on how big an agenda is, you cannot have people having a small panel by the side. They may just want, oh, I don't have time, I'm coming in for 30 minutes, I want to speak. And what they want is maybe one-on-one interview in 5 minutes. After that, let's take a decision, sign commitments, and get out. So what determines what you do is the level of profile for that conversation and what is best. And then also the level of the amount of time. If you know somebody has 30 minutes in the room you can't do a 4 or 5 panel. You may want to do a one-on-one, a small fireside, so the combination of options or approaches to use is determined by some of these things I've just mentioned.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That has been an amazing session. I would have to repeat it again. I have learned so much. I've learned a lot, and I'm certain our fellows have really gained a lot of insight and are working their way towards becoming experts in moderating sessions. And we're very, very grateful for taking out your time and to committing to coming to this session. And on behalf of all the fellows and AFC, thank you so much. We're really, really grateful. So fellows, let's appreciate Dr. Osasuyi in the comment section. Let's give her a virtual hand clap. Let's express our gratitude. And also, I would want you to drop 1 or 2 key takeaways you've taken out from this session and you plan to implement. For me, I would practice more and get better, and always know that, I would always need to be at the back end, and that's like the injury room. You would always need to put in the practice till you get towards becoming a better moderator or a more engaging panelist. So